Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly ag weather forecast brought to you by Farm Credit. I'm going to start you off with the first view here of what the month of May has really kind of given us, especially the last 2 weeks in terms of the upper level high pattern. So basically what we've had is troughs here and this large ridge that started off kind of between Hudson Bay and Greenland. It's just continued to migrate itself to the west where it spent so much time. Now that's changed our temperature and precipitation patterns for the southeast, and I think it's going to continue to influence our temperature and precipitation patterns because of the evolution of where this ridge is going to go. Now what it's still doing is creating a lot of wildfire smoke, as you see here. These fires are in parts of British Columbia and Alberta that's actually off the map, and what they're doing is the smoke is just really getting pulled into the overall flow here. And we've had, air quality issues, alerts, issued through a big part of the northern tier of the United States. We've had some of the degradation of our air quality here in North Carolina. But what we're going to see here in this upcoming pattern shift is going to be something that's going to help put those fires out, hopefully, or at least reduce them, and really kind of change the United States over to a very dry pattern for the central U.S. The big questions for us here in the Carolinas down to Georgia is what's going to happen over Florida. There is some consensus in the models of developing this kind of 2-week-long trough feature here. I don't know what else to call it. I call it split flow, but a very odd trough that's over Florida that's going to influence their precipitation pattern, southern Georgia, and along the coast of the Carolinas. Now, I'm talking about that because we saw part of this last week, right? At the end of last week, there was this coastal low that formed and very slowly moved here. And you're seeing the weekend precipitation totals. In the interior of North Carolina, Virginia, nothing. But along the coast, some places here saw extremely heavy rainfall. Same for this section of South Carolina. Look at northern Georgia versus eastern Georgia versus central Georgia, quite dry. Now, thinking about this and kind of giving you this snapshot around the rest of the country, let's show you first how some of the stats have got us up to this point, and then figure out what I meant by this odd low that's going to hang out over Florida. So some stats first. Now, this goes from the beginning of the year to May the 1st. So the beginning of the year to May 1st, we know that this whole region had, for the most part, a very, very mild start to the year. Winter was mild, early spring was mild, but then as the West Coast started off things so cold, when that temperature pattern shifted around, there we go, we see that since the beginning of May, we've now had an extreme amount of heat in the West, and overall we have been cooler. So this is the first shift in the pattern, taking that ridge to this direction, and that gave us a cooler May overall. Now, on the precipitation side of it, this is where we really got to dig in, because I want you to see a couple of things around the country, and then I want to focus on specifically North Carolina. So this section of the plains, which have been deep in drought, has had a lot of precipitation. We're expecting more in this area, whereas this whole region, I'm kind of shading in through here, is expected to be very dry, and that's going to get all the way to this pocket right here, Virginia, North Carolina, which in the month of May have been drier. What we're going to see in terms of wet conditions is going to be down here in southern Georgia and along the coasts, but we have to just assess this to know where we've been when I give you where we're going here in a few seconds. So here is the pattern. There we go, right there. This is what I was trying to describe, okay? The jet stream is now repositioned. There's now a trough in the west, so we've knocked out the heat. We've now brought flow right here over those wildfires. But then look what it does. And the southern branch is doing this, and there's that little circulation right there. Now, what is the void this week? The void is all through here. And with no good flow in the upper levels, there's just no chance to get good precipitation in there outside of widely scattered possibilities of getting some showers and storms. All the action is going to run the periphery of this area right in through here. Now, to show you what this looks like when we go to these maps, because these are the ones I'd like to show you a lot of, that trough ridge pattern, okay, so there it is. See it flowing up like this? And here's the bottom piece down there. So what we're going to see throughout the rest of this week is this, and this is the guy we got to talk about here, because by Wednesday, getting into Thursday and Friday, we have a steep trough centered right here over parts of Florida. We need to see where this is going to deliver the heaviest rainfall, what it's going to look like as it tries to come up the East Coast, and what does it do to our temperatures. And I said it's going to be around for a while. I've got it all the way out here to next week, and maybe not moving north until we get into a Memorial Day. And then where does the pattern end up? Well, by day 10, we're kind of back into something like this. And I need to tell you what that means for the central U.S. and what this also means for us in the southeast. So let's dig into it. This is the near term first. Let's start this off at 8 a.m. on Monday. Already precipitation right here in parts of Georgia. As we play this throughout the day on Monday, getting into Monday night, a lot of scattered storms into this area. Now, there'll be a pretty hard northern edge to this because there's a lot of high pressure and control north of that. But a lot of scattered storms here, Georgia getting over to Alabama. That's Monday night. Let's play out into Tuesday morning. Can you see the flow? I mean, the flow is coming in like this. And that, generally speaking, is not the right direction to get the precipitation into the Carolinas. But because of this low that's developing here to the south, which is, again, just a very odd setup, we're going to see a lot of isolated storms, some of which are going to produce some very heavy rain here down into Florida. But through the beginning of this week, mostly dry throughout the Carolinas. So I wanted to kind of show you the peculiarity of this particular flow. Now, I'm going to come back to this and just try to say, what is it that could get us here as we start the month of June? So we saw the near term. Can I just take you quickly to the long term again? And what I'm thinking about a lot is this. You see, when the MJO goes into phase 7, which it is in right now, okay, it's sitting right here. We looked historically and we can say that generally that puts some troughs in the west, ridges over the mountains into the Midwest, and then troughs that kind of finish here over the East Coast. And by day 10, we kind of see that, right? There's the trough I mentioned in the west, the ridge comes over the mountains, and it dives like this. I think MJO phase 7 is now starting to have a bit of a control on this early June pattern, but we want to know how long it lasts because the next 10 days look like this. So this includes the last week of June, the last week of May, and the first few days of June. And what do you see? Storms, desperately needed storms here. The odd behavior of the precip coming out of Georgia and trying to turn up the coast, but we are drier in the interior of South Carolina, North Carolina, and northern Georgia. And it's just a very interesting setup. Now notice in through here, there's going to be places in the midsection of the country, specifically the Corn Belt, that may go 10 days without a drop of rain. And we need rain in this area right now. So this is what I want you to get about this setup. Now, I told you I wanted to do some long-range stuff right now, and then we'll come back to the near term. So I want to show you what was released by the Climate Prediction Center late last week. This is their new outlook for the month of June. And overall, we would look at this and not see much in terms of stress. But what I'm concerned about is when I show you this precipitation pattern we're in, and you remember that so far, where was it? Right here, there we go, that we've been drier in this area. Any continued dryness here is going to start to put some stress on the crop, even though it's not going to be cold, okay? So this, again, is that June outlook from the CPC. Now, at the end of this video, I'm going to give you the new long-range update. And still, the long-range models are going over wetter for the Tennessee Valley, the Ohio Valley, and they're then wrapping that around here into the East Coast. And this just continues to suggest that we've got a stronger Bermuda high somewhere sitting out here. In terms of heat stress, summer heat stress, the models just aren't finding it yet, which means we're going to have to continue to watch that Bermuda high to see if something like that's going to come in. But I want to show you one other important thing that the CPC released last week, and that is their new outlook for seasonal drought. Now, they're not expecting any to develop here over the Carolinas or down into Georgia, but major improvement here in an area that's been deep in drought for over 18 months. So that's critical to see. Now, that 1 month outlook is not shared by other forecasting models. This is the European model. Now, it's wetter for us, but it's very dry in through here, and the CPC didn't see that, right? It was a different look. Let me go back and show it to you. That's their outlook versus the European model. Now, I've got a lot of criticism right now about the European model just having a strong initialization bias. What that means is whatever the model started with, it just continues to carry it forward. One of the other models I look at, although I don't show it to you as often as I show you the European, is this one called the CFSV2. It's the Climate Forecasting System version 2 model. And it is, for June 4th through the 10th, wetter in through here. And look at the next week, 11th through the 17th, wetter. So I come back to this again. We've been drier here. We know that our next 10 days are going to be drier in that same area. Wet to the south and wetter along the coast. Possibly wetter in the north of North Carolina. But we want to know, when is the pattern going to shift? And I think it's going to have to get into that first full week of June before we start to see things kind of moving around and changing a bit. So let's take this map and look at it a different way. This is from the WPC. So that was the European model. This is the WPC. This is the forecast for the next 7 days total precipitation. In southern Georgia, really good chance at grabbing at least 1.5 inches of precip. Pockets in South Carolina, yeah, but a lot of South Carolina and North Carolina are drier with this pattern. Very wet in parts of Florida. Look how look how very dry the Midwest is, but how wet the plains are. And this rain is desperately needed to put out these fires here in British Columbia and Alberta. From there, I would like to show you what the European model is saying. So let's play this forward. This is a full week of total accumulated precipitation. That's through Wednesday. Here we get into Friday. We're going to play this all the way out to next Monday morning. There we are. So we could see late this weekend moisture trying to come up like this. But overall, it's just wettest right down here. In the Midwest, very dry, but some drought-busting rains for the plains. Now, how does it all shake out? Let's start this off on Monday morning here and play forward. And that low, that pesky low just sitting over Florida. Did you just see here? I played through Wednesday already. Constant showers, but the flow coming in like this is suppressing their northward extent. So we just play through Wednesday into Thursday, break for most folks on Thursday, and then this low by Friday tries to curl up the coast, delivering some rain right here in coastal North Carolina throughout the day on Thursday into Friday, and then possibly a little bit into the weekend. But that's it, and I'll be honest, I don't buy into exactly what the model's suggesting for this. You're going to have to watch it all week long. It's going to be a tricky forecast. But here we are at the end of the month, getting into Memorial Day weekend, and the week that follows shows wetter conditions for us from the CPC, near normal from the European model, slight dry bias from the GFS, meaning that we have to see the pattern transition in the western United States first before we can really begin to assess what it's going to do here for us along the East Coast, because our flow right now is very much being dominated by what's happening in the Pacific versus what's happening in the Atlantic. But I'm going to show you what I'm worried about in the Atlantic at the end of this video. But I want to get to temperatures first. So this is what we're looking at in terms of accumulating GDDs this week. Now, these numbers are actually low. We can normally this time of year pick up well over 120, down here in Georgia over 160. That's not hard to do. But we are going to be seeing a cooler week overall. Now, I just want to show you this. This is where we are expecting frost this week. No, there's not going to be a frost in this part of Iowa. That's a little glitch in the data. But New England, higher elevation out west, I just want you to see that there is no late season frost coming in with this pattern. But we will see some cooler temperatures. There was Sunday's highs. Getting into Monday, see, we're seeing near normal to cooler than normal temperatures because of that cloud cover. That's Tuesday as the heat pours on in the upper Midwest and northern plains. Getting into Wednesday, stretching across most of the Corn Belt, we are cooler. See that? So just going forward into Thursday, Friday, will it moderate for the weekend? Likely not. Still have that pesky low sitting over Florida, cloud cover and precip. Now, how long does it last? Well, this is our 5-day sliding window of average temperature anomalies. I'm going to take you all the way out there to day 5 through 10. We likely keep our cooler air around all the way through the end of May. So it doesn't mean it's going to get cold. It just means that the chances of being hot are really limited here. And as we play this out into the first 5 days of June, we do start to see some moderation occurring. And that'll be about the time, about June 5th, I think this pattern can begin to flip itself around a bit and do a bit more what I expect it to do when there is an El Nino. Now, there's been a lot of focus on the development of this El Nino, which is the warm water you see here. There's still the negative PDO signal that's up the West Coast, but it's been getting much warmer with time. In fact, take a look at this. Take a look at this. The waters off the West Coast here have been getting quite warm as of late. But over the last 7 days, look how much warmer the water's gotten in through here as well. And that's what we need to talk about. Because right now in the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and in the Western Atlantic, except for right along the Gulf Stream, we've got very, very warm water, much above average. And to show you how much above average, take a look at this. So this is the tropical Atlantic looking at the Reynolds weekly sea surface temperatures. We're just looking at sea surface temperatures. Now, normally in the heart of February, the average is somewhere around 26 degrees Celsius. And then when you get into the heart of the hurricane season, it jumps up to about almost 28. So let's call that 2 degrees. Right now, this blue line, because the black line is average, the blue line is suggesting that we're nearly a degree warmer than average. And I know that doesn't seem like much, but when the entire year fluctuation typically fits within 2 degrees, this is huge. So I think about that, and it gives me just thinking about what might this mean for the hurricane season. Because we keep talking about how this El Nino is developing, which typically just kind of shuts systems down here. But I'm not sure. There's a lot of heat in that water, and it's going to be something that is going to be critical to getting tropical cyclones to develop once we get into later in the season. Just remember, June 1st is the beginning of hurricane season. So there we go. All right, last couple things here. I want to get to this. There you go. Right now, the forecast models are suggesting that over the next 11 months, there's better than an 80%, almost a 90% probability of achieving and maintaining an El Nino event, and very high probability going forward. What does that mean? Well, I have one last long-range model to show you. I've shown you all the other ones in the last couple of videos. So this is now the final of our sequence of long-range forecasts that come from our modeling agencies. It is the multi-model probability forecast from Columbia University. This is done in partnership with the CPC. We're looking here at June, July, August global precipitation anomalies. Now, you notice there's not a whole lot going on here in the southeast. No strong signals. But if you look across Europe, possibly a stormy summer. Look in this part of China. This is the North China Plain, the Manchurian Plain, possibly wetter than average. Where we dry? Indonesia, the Philippines, and much of Australia. We'll keep an eye on this to see what happens after we go through our summer and head toward our fall, which means spring down here in South America, and what that can mean for the next year. But as it stands, the crop in South America, especially the Serena crop, looks pretty strong right now. But this map is not necessarily forecasting that. But I just want to bring you up to speed on this new long-range forecast and what it's showing in terms of precipitation. But the number one thing I'll be watching in your long range are these ocean temperatures here and what they could mean to the strength of the Bermuda High and what it can mean for the hurricane season that's coming up. So I'll leave you there. I look forward to giving you another forecast next week. Until then, have a great rest of your week and happy Memorial Day weekend. A little early for you, okay? Thanks.